Good day, everyone. Our topic this meeting is all about the self, society, and culture. Introduction. When you were born, do you think that your infant self just said, "Oh, I think makes males should go for blue and play guns, while girls should choose pink and play dolls"? Did you already know that saying po, opo, sir, ma'am, kuya, and ate? For a long time, philosophers debated over the self in a mind-body perspective. The advent of the institutionalization of the other social sciences like history, anthropology, sociology, political science, and psychology, among others of these branches, the social sciences study society and culture. The self was also seen as a part of social processes. This statement tells us to learn saying sir, ma'am, kuya, ate, especially po at opo. It is our way of addressing person older than us. We must apply these habits to ourselves so that we can learn to respect every person we interact. Also, we can understand the word self. Because self was seen as part of social processes, we are all processing our learnings and our interaction from other people. Like the philosophers debated, there are similarities of experience, but each person can also have different perspective based on the people or groups that he or she interacts with. Then, abstraction. There is a common saying in social sciences, especially in sociology and anthropology, human beings are by nature social beings. This that is, each of us do not exist in a vacuum. We interact with people, and even the most introvert of us would relate and communicate with a few. When we say abstraction, it defines taking away or removing. So these statements teach us to remove or taking away our bad habit. Like this sentence, guys, we interact with people, and even the most introvert of us would have to relate and communicate with a few. So it means there are no exception. We must remove that habit in order to appreciate things and to understand each other.
The norms is the pagmamano or mano, and the value is respect or pagkamagalang. When you see someone who has an accident, the norms prohibits you from laughing but prescribe you to help. Norms are rules on what to do or not what to do in situation. And mano or pagmamano and honoring gesture performed in a Filipino culture as a sign of respect for an elder and a way of requesting a blessing from the elder. Society and culture. Society is composed of people, and culture is composed of ideas, behavior, and material possession. Kendall 2006. These two coexist and are independent with other. What do you think would be the culture of a Filipino society? To maintain a smooth functioning society, social institutions are created which are set of ideas, norms, practice, or mechanisms organized and focused on addressing to needs of the community. McIntyre 2002. An example of such institution is the government. These institutions have a profound effect on our concept of self because they basically provide a systematic process of doing things. As a person grows into a society, he or she imbibes the culture of that society through the processes of socialization. Socialization or inculturation and in anthropology is a lifelong process of learning, teaching, internalizing, and living the culture of a society. Thank you.
Theoretical approaches and frameworks enable us to combine and use concepts in a meaningful way to look and understand a part of reality. In this case, it's all about the connection of self, society, and culture. Under the theory of symbolic interactionism, George Herbert Mead claimed that the self is created, developed, and changed through human interaction. He believed that people develop self-image through interactions with other people. According to Elmore Oyserman and Smith 2012, there are at least 3 reasons why self and identity are social products. The first one is the self did not just come out of thin air. Our socio-cultural context affected who we are, even most of the choices we think we freely make. This influence of society and culture will still have an effect on you even if you move from one place to another and adopt a new perspective. The second one is, whether we like to admit it or not, we actually need others to affirm and reinforce who we think we are. We also need them as reference points about our identity. One interesting example is the social media. In the case of Facebook, there are those who will consciously or unconsciously try to garner more likes or positive reaction, and that can and will reinforce their self-concept. And the third one, our notion of what is personally important to us is also influenced by current trends of what is important in our society. For example, education. Education might be an important thing to your self-concept because you grew up in a family that valued education. The second example is money. Money might be important to some as well because they may have grown in a poor family and realize how important money is in addressing certain needs like medical emergencies. Social interaction and group affiliation is the vital factors in creating our self-concept, especially our social identity and our perception of who we are. Self-concept is how we perceive our behaviors, abilities, and unique characteristics. Social identity is how we identify and define ourselves. It is our perceptions of specific and selected traits, qualities, and characteristics that represent us. Ruth Benedict and Margaret Mead founded that another school thought is the culture. They argued that the personality or the self is dependent on the cultural practices and socialization process of certain thus. Meanwhile, Ruth Benedict's famous anthropological books entitled Coming of Age in Samoa and Sex and Temperament in the Three Primitive Societies concluded that personal development, especially gender rules and traits, is not actually based on biological traits. Clifford James Geertz of 1926 and 2006 are from the school of symbolic and interpretive anthropology through looks at culture as a collection of symbols with meanings, and these meanings are made, communicated, and negotiated by each people to make sense of their lives and interactions.
Social institutions. Social institutions are organized to address the needs of a society, and they too have a profound effect on our concept self. There are 5 samples of social institutions. Number 1 is kinships or family. This is the most basic social institution of a society that organizes us based on our familial ties. It can be based on blood relations like sibling relations, by marriage like a husband and a wife, or social, which are relationships not falling under the first two but you still consider them as a family. Your family is almost a miniature society where you first learn to relate to the outside world. Your parents were your first interaction with authority and economy. Your siblings or cousin, you first learn how to relate with younger people. Number 2 is economics, market. This system aims to regulate the flow of resources and services. Ideally, this should ensure that everyone gets a fair share of goods, or that a person in need will get the service he or she needs in order to address a necessity. Ideally, this system should also regulate the price of the products to ensure fair competition among producers and resellers. At times, it can also control the demand by promoting a need or a want for a certain product. An example of this is the committee in charge of food during a school activity. Their function is to ensure that every participant gets to eat. However, they must also calculate and announce the necessary budget in order for it to be included in the registration fee or target funds to be requested from the school or donors. Furthermore, they can add a special cake or limited item that can be bought for additional price. Number 3 is politics/government. This is usually composed of various organizations ensuring peace and order by legitimizing the use of power of certain people or groups. In the Philippines, the government is divided into 3 equal branches. Number 1 is executive, headed by the president and who is in charge of enforcing the law. Number 2 is legislative, composed of the House of the Representatives and the Senate of the Philippines, who are in charge of creating, amending, or repealing those laws. And the judiciary, led by the Supreme Court to provide properly interpretation of laws and ensure that they are following the constitutions and basic human rights. Note that while the President represents the Philippines, he or she shall be treated as a king with the sole authority and power in a republic and democratic country like the Philippines. These 3 branches are treated equally with powers to check and balance each other under the constitutions. They serve the country, and the utmost authority still comes from the people. Number 4 is the education/school. The basic function of schools is to ensure the knowledge of the past and the culture of the society gets transmitted from one generation to another. It safeguards continuity or brings about changes to the other social institutions. It aims to produce people who can live harmoniously in a given social environment as well as able to be productive citizens for the economy. Some look at this as a mechanistic way of producing workers. But one must also consider that education has also played in bringing new ideas that change what have been oppressive status quos in the past. Last but not the least, religion/church. This is an organized set of practices, symbols, and artifacts regarding the belief of supernatural. There are several reasons why people believe in supernaturals. A. Explanation of the unexplainable. Number B. Meaning and purpose of life. C. Continuity of relationship with the people that we care about even after death, among others. Aside from supernatural, religion or the church can also function to teach and reinforce values, norms, and morals in partnership with the family and the school. If you will reflect on it, most of the things we use to describe ourselves come from these social institutions. Other social institutions include mass media, community service organization, health services, and recreation. However, as pointed by George, a person can also still choose what to adopt, reject, or change. The self or our identity, if you want to call it, it is a result of the interaction and discourse between a person and the society. We are introduced and socialized into our groups, teaching us all the status, rules, values, and norms that we need to live in this society, which became a part of our description of ourselves.